I'm Trish.
And I'm Brandi.
And you're listening to episode 10 of
Connected Conversations. This is your space where international teachers, school leaders, and parents like us get together for real talk, real tips, and real conversations that go way beyond the shiny brochures of international education.
One of the first things we'd like to mention before we get started with today's episode is that Brandi and I are going to always do our best to respect the privacy and identity of children on our podcast. We know that safeguarding in all of its forms and right to privacy is very important, especially this day and age.
Absolutely. So we've mentioned that we are parents to sons. Mine is younger. Trisha's son is older and graduated. And we want to stay that general when discussing them and other children on this podcast.
Yep. And in our episodes, we'll be talking to parents and educators with children to share their stories. And we'll do our best to speak really generally about their children.
So while we aim to give you specific details in specific contexts, we absolutely want to protect the rights of the child as we share our stories.
Which leads us into today's episode. Today's episode is part of our Insider Voices series, where we share real stories from international educators, leaders, and parents.
And today we will be joined by Marion, who Trish and I first had the pleasure of connecting with as a colleague at our international school in Prague.
She is a highly experienced international school leader from France who studied English literature and culture at the Sorbonne. She taught there for 5 years and now has been an international educator and leader since 2006. Like us, she met a Czech local and is now tethered forever to the Czech Republic, and she has 2 teenage children.
And what makes her story unique is that as she was searching for a new international school for her children, she realized that both of them had very different needs. So she ultimately chose 2 different schools. And today we're sharing her story.
Brandi and I have learned so much from Marion over the years and count her as a wise, connected friend, to be sure. So she's an assistant director who is especially gifted at safeguarding, pastoral, and a host of other things that we hope to use her for in future podcast episodes as well.
So if you've ever wondered how families make these big decisions, weighing curricula, culture, community, and future pathways, Marion's story will give you an honest look at what the process is really like.
So are you ready to dive in? It's time to get connected.
Hi, Marion. Thanks for joining us today.
Hi, girls. I'm really thankful for the invitation.
So, Marion, we're so excited to have you here. Can you give us a little bit of information about who you are and specifically tell us about yourself as a parent of 2 children?
Yes. So I am Marion. I am almost 50 years old and I'm French and I live in Prague. I've been working in the international sector as an educator for the last 20 years, but originally I graduated from France. Anyway, what you're interested in today is my life as a parent, and I have 2 children, 14 and something and 17 and something. Okay, so my daughter is currently in year 13 at the English College in Prague, and my son, who's 14, is entering year 9, has just entered year 9 at the French Lycée.
Oh, and that's interesting. So you're telling us that your children are in 2 different schools. Can you talk us through how they ended up on 2 different pathways and what were your choices with that?
Absolutely. So my children did their first years of education at the Prague British International School, and I decided to take them out of the school for personal reasons, which means that I quickly had to think of 2 schools for them and 2 different paths. My daughter, who was not very sociable at the time and who had grown up in a very nurturing environment and very international, couldn't join a Czech school. What I mean by couldn't is that I made the decision that she probably wouldn't be very happy in a Czech school. The Czech system is, in my understanding, not very focused on the individual needs of the students and rather conservative in their approach. I decided when making a decision, because I had heard of the English college in Prague, I had friends working there, I had parents who had placed their children in the school, and they were very happy about it. So I contacted them very quickly, and I was very satisfied with also the fact that they were offering a double diploma, that's to say the IB and the Czech Maturita. That was the decision I made for my daughter. For my son, it was slightly different. First of all, I couldn't afford 2 international schools. And I felt my son was different. He's always been rooted in the Czech culture, even though he's half Czech, half French. And he already had a very strong sense of belonging as a football player because he's been in a team for a while. And I felt that he would cope much better with the Czech system. So I put him in a Czech school for 2 years. After 2 years, I realized that I had been wrong, and that even though there were loads of things that he really appreciated about the Czech school, mostly the fact that he finished school at 1:30, which for me is not a really valid argument.
Yeah. Really? Are you sure?
No, and that he was spending a lot of time on his own at home. And I really felt that he was mostly, and that was my concern, I really felt that he was under-challenged, under-motivated, and he had lost his love of learning. And for that reason, we decided with his father to move him to the French lycée. So for my son, it means that this year is an important year because it's now his 3rd educational system type of school. So international British, Czech, and now French.
Wow.
He must be very adaptable and resilient at this point. How's he liking the transition so far? What is he noticing?
He's very happy. And this has been only 3 weeks. He's made friends, but also and this is what I was hoping for. I've noticed that he's talking about school again. He's telling me about some of the things that he's learning, some of the new words he's learning, and he's sharing some anecdotes about his teacher. He's excited about his learning about colonialism in history, and he's just sharing facts about what he's learning. So I can see that this child who's always been very eager to learn now is fed, so to speak, and is excited about learning. This is only in 3 weeks. So he's very happy. Yes. And really, he didn't want to go at all. He was very, very angry with both of us. And he kept saying, yes, I'm going to fail on purpose. I'm not going to like it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Can I ask about the languages just really quickly? It's brought to mind. You said if they started in bilingual, so they were obviously doing part of the day in English and part Czech. And then, for example, your son went to 2 years, and that was mainly Czech only, I would assume, except for his foreign language classes. Is he now doing French all day only?
French
or is
all day.
It also kind of a bilingual? Wow.
French all day, but because he's half Czech, he still has to do this compulsory part of his Czech education. So at least at the end of next year, I believe, he has to also have some Czech lessons, 3 Czech lessons a week. Yes. So he has all his lessons are in French, 3 Czech lessons a week, 3 English lessons a week, and 3 Spanish lessons a week.
Wow. Yeah. That's a global learner right there. Wow.
Seriously.
Well done.
So it sounds like when you were starting out this process to find the right school for both of them, you were considering their personalities and who they were as learners. And then as they had their educational journey, you were reevaluating and seeing. I like how you said that he felt fed, or he was fed educationally. So that process changed over time then for you.
Absolutely. And so I don't know if this is really a question or what your question is here. The process changed, yes. And this was something that I've been thinking about when you invited me to your podcast. One of the advice I would would give to parents, because I feel that this is my experience, is that we have to talk to our children all the time. And I feel that this is what happened with both of them, where I kept talking to them and reassessing the choices that had been made for them.
Yeah. That's so important. I think that's one of the things we want to share on this podcast is that, like, I think many times we as parents have our vision for what we think we want our children to study or do. I thought mine was going to be an IB-DP candidate for sure. And then it just didn't work out that way for him. It wasn't his interest. It was my path or my journey. And I've seen a lot of parents like push their children into a path that is maybe what they want without considering that it's not our butts in the seats for those 12 hours a day or 5 if it's Czech school, but it's a lot of commitment on their side as well. So I'm glad that it sounds like the choice was together in your family, right?
Well, more from our side, as I said, he really didn't want to join the French school. But what I have to say as well is that I completely agree with what you're saying, but also it means that we also have to be flexible as parents, in the sense that for me, I would never have thought that my son could join the French lycée. Really, this was not one of the ideas I had ever. And this was something that I would say that last year, when I saw that my son was under challenged and was mostly satisfied with hanging out with his friends, this is really when I started thinking about it and weighing the benefits of such an education. And because each child is completely different, in his case, it meant many different things that maybe we'll be talking about later in the podcast.
Yeah. So we've covered in different episodes earlier that we've done the different types of international schools, running national curriculums abroad. And is that a choice? You said that that's a choice that you made for your son in particular. Was there anything that stood out about the Lycée Français that you wanted to specifically have him in that program? You said that he was rooted in Czech before, and now you're switching him to the French side. What was it that stood out about the program that worked for you?
Nothing really specific, I'm afraid. And I know that this is probably not the type of response that you're looking for, but
okay.
It was more...
Any response is good.
Yes, it was not so much in terms of curriculum, or that it was in terms of structure. And that is the structure that I liked. That's to say, a very lovely environment. It's a beautiful building right in the center of the city. He has to cross the bridge every day he takes the tram and sees the castle every day. And I felt that, and also it's a rather maybe privileged or safe environment. Not too privileged in terms of finances. It's not such parents are not so wealthy as they are in other international schools. And it felt like the right structure for him. In terms of curriculum, I have to say that it's very broad. You will study absolutely everything, all your sciences, all your humanities, different languages. But there's nothing really that stands out. And if I had to choose between the French curriculum and the British curriculum in terms of my vision or my beliefs, I would go for the British curriculum.
Okay. And so this process of considering curriculum or anything else, it differed for your other child, right? Your older daughter.
It did. Absolutely. In fact, for each child, and I understand that this is difficult and to pinpoint what is right, but for my daughter, it was more the fact that her well-being was something that was really important at the school that she chose. Okay, at the English College in Prague, the fact that I talked about the diverse environment. I think this was something very important for her. And also because she was a child who was, I would say, a little bit unsociable and a little bit vulnerable, continuity and consistency with the British curriculum that she was familiar with was essential.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's nice. And you described like that first impression that you got from each of the schools. Could you recount like maybe the first parent night if you've had it, or the way the community felt in each of those schools, perhaps?
Yes, absolutely. Also, there's one thing that I haven't mentioned. You were talking about curriculum and other important aspects. I would like to add something as far as my daughter is concerned, is the importance of the language. So my daughter, for her, her language of education is the English language, 100%. And her language of communication is the English language as well. And I can see that she doesn't have the same flexibility as my son when it comes to being able to express her opinions in French, for instance. And very often she will speak to me in English, and I have to remind her that this is not my language.
We are French.
Yeah. And she says, "Oh, it's just because I'm tired." This is her language. And this is this is one interesting thing that also I've observed many times in my time in international schools, is that we, by putting our children in international schools, sometimes when neither the language of the father or the mother is English, then we create monsters. Lovely monsters, but still,
lovely, that we still love at the end of most days.
Yes.
Yeah,
So
sure.
now to answer your question, so very simply, my first evening or my first social event, let's call it a social event. There was a barbecue during the first week of school where all the parents were invited, all the teachers were there. They were nibbles and alcohol, and the atmosphere was extremely friendly. Teachers were coming out of their way to meet with the new parents. And you could tell that it was all about the community. At the time, the English College was also undergoing some major reconstruction and had to be relocated. And so they were really trying to promote the fact that even though they were in a different building, the community hadn't changed. And it was obvious that this was their most important value, their community. Last week, I attended my first event at the French Lycée, which was a sort of pedagogical meeting where they were introducing all the different teachers, and there was none of this. It was really so the teachers were introducing themselves one after the other. They didn't say anything about their teaching style, their vision. They were just talking about, I like to use a soft copybook. Well, I prefer just really, or I want the children to use that type of paper. And that was that. And I felt that, yes, it brought me to my own education, brought me back to my own education, obviously, because I was educated in the French system. There's really a completely different approach to community and to curriculum.
So we're asking you these questions and what your perception is. How about your kids? Have either of them ever commented in their own way on the community at the schools that they're in, either liking it or not liking it, or even compared to previous schools, liking it or not liking it?
That's a very good question. When my son left the Prague British International School and he joined the Czech school, he noticed that there was absolutely no community. Okay, and he was fine with this. He didn't mind it at all. He felt that sometimes trying to create a community with, 65 different nationalities was not something that was somehow artificial at times. And he didn't mind that at all. As for my daughter, she really values the community. One aspect that she doesn't value, and this is something that I've been thinking about sharing with you as well, is that, as we know, international schools, whether I believe they're American or British, have at their heart this strong idea of community, being together, sharing some values through assemblies, through house competitions, values of the month. And I have to say that both my children were never really bought into that.
It felt too forced.
It felt
for them.
quite forced. And for certain cultures, and I would say probably the French culture, that's always a little bit ironic, and maybe the Czech culture that I will not try to define.
It's undefinable. Don't worry.
But it doesn't work for everyone. And I have to, from experience as well, for a lot of the Czech students, they always were a little bit skeptical about this, what they saw as a forced approach to community.
I can see that. I've never really thought about that before, but I can absolutely understand where you're talking about with that, because I mean, the Czechs that I know and have been around for these last 20 years definitely are more like individualistic for the most part, or like go out into nature and connect that way. They're very much a hiking and outdoorsy culture. So I can definitely see that some of our rah cheerlead fests that are definitely my part of America, like can be a little bit, could be forced or intimidating for some, for sure.
I mean, I see it kind of as a double-edged sword, because like as an educator, you want to build an opportunity for community in your school. And for a lot of kids, and I'll speak for the introverts, like that can be really uncomfortable as a student. But then at the same time, like if we just stay in our comfort zones and we don't branch out, then can community be created? I mean, it would look very different, I think. So I can see both sides.
I agree with both of you. Yeah. And I would say that sometimes, and I also have to say that a lot of parents are actually, as opposed to their children, this is something that they like about the international education, that their child or children are part of a safe, kind environment with values. This is something that they value. And unfortunately, children, especially when they're going through their education, are not necessarily the best at reflecting on what is good for them and what isn't.
It's so true.
Sure.
Yeah.
And so I get that.
For instance, both my children were part of a very nurturing environment. They had a certain distance with it. Having said that, I am absolutely convinced that it was a very strong, that it gave them a very strong feeling of confidence, to put it.
Awesome.
Yeah. And that they don't necessarily know this, but I'm sure that in 10 years' time, they'll be able to reflect on it.
For sure. I know that is something that has always been, like in my time working in Thailand, Malaysia, and my school in China, we were always trying to promote this sense of well-being, this community that we were going to build, especially through house systems that I like working with, you got Waterhouse versus Firehouse or Kingsley versus Alverston back in China. There was this competition element where it was this safe kind of community. And we've heard in America, schools within schools, trying to build these communities. So on that same vein, then, like, were there other parts of the school community that like became important to you as a parent, or that your children have said, such as like the class size or the facilities offered were important to them, extracurriculars, like the other parts of the community?
Absolutely. So when it comes to the French Lycée, for instance, they have an amazing gym hall with a climbing wall. It's absolutely amazing. And they also have a football pitch on top of the building. So they're playing essentially on a roof.
Wow.
And
I didn't know that.
I hope there's nets.
Yes.
Otherwise, I'll have to watch next time I'm going past.
And I can tell that this is something that my son really appreciates. And again, being part of a beautiful environment. And again, children tend to underestimate this or not necessarily realize that this is what they're being offered. But when you're part of a beautiful building, that the surroundings are amazing, that you get to see the castle every morning. This is your state of mind while you're being educated, And so I would say definitely the facilities were something. Similarly, at the Prague British International School, we had a huge football pitch, like a really big space outdoors that the children really, really enjoyed. A bit like on an American campus. And it's only when my son and my daughter actually moved out of it, and my son joined the Czech school where there's not even a playground, because children are educated from 8:30 to 1:30, and they have no breaks in between. And so he never got to go out on the playground because there was no playground, and the breaks were in the classroom, and they were playing with a softball. That he realized that how lucky he had been. He had been, mostly him. Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah.
So obviously we're all in Prague, and we have these references for where these schools are. And we've mentioned a few times that we have children as well. And as you know, I have my son. And I'm just thinking about the commute as a parent educator, and how when I'm going to my job, I've got my young son in tow, and we're going on the metro together. And I can imagine you having that experience before with your kids, but now they're older, and now they're in different schools, and now they're independently traveling on the public transport or the metro or however they're getting to school. Was that some kind of factor for you in picking where their next school was going to be?
Definitely. So I feel that as a family, we experienced everything. When they were smaller, I didn't want them to be held hostages because of my job at the school. And so I paid for a very expensive shuttle bus so that they could be dropped off at the bottom of our building. That lasted for a while. Yes, this was great. Then when they got older, I would travel to school with them and back. And I felt that they didn't have much independence, without mentioning the fact that clearly we were always together. And now that they're both independently going to two different schools, taking trams, managing the transport system on their app, it has given them a sense of freedom, a sense of autonomy that is extremely precious. And it also happened at the right time. So when my daughter was, I don't know, I think 14, and my son around 10, which was really ideal. And I think this is a very important step in our children's education. The fact that they can move freely around the city. One thing I noticed when I was working at my previous international school is that a lot of children were never took public transport, were systematically being driven by their parents, and had no experience of the public network, which in my opinion was a little bit of a shame. First of all, they were not interacting with the rest of the world.
Yeah, right.
Yes. And then they had absolutely no skill. They didn't have this independent skills that we want ultimately our children to develop. We want them to be safe when they're young, and as they grow up, we want them to develop this very essential skills: understanding of the world around them, becoming independent, doing things without us. Yeah.
So can I ask then, if you, in another timeline, if you would have stayed at this other school, all three of you together, would you have allowed them then, in that same vein, to travel independently so they could have that skill of their own navigating public transport and whatnot.
Yes, I guess I would have, definitely. I think that my daughter had started to, actually, because she was on a different campus in the last year of her education. But still, she was very attached to me. Both of them were, because I was working there. So they would never have had the freedom that they have now. And interestingly enough, this was something that we were discussing yesterday evening at the dinner table with my son. And he was saying that he was really grateful that he had the opportunity to move out of that other school. He really loved it, but he said, I feel that this was the right move for me. I was.
Wow,
that's awesome.
Because
not all parents get to have that validation. That's amazing.
No, I know. It's validating time at the moment. But,
and it's nice to hear it within the time frame of it happening rather than it being years and years later.
You're absolutely right.
So that's very good. Nice.
But
nice.
also,
no, I'm just thinking. Oh, go ahead.
No, I'm so sorry. I just wanted to say something that one thing that if we're here, if our conversation can support or can guide other parents, one of the aspects I think to consider while choosing international schools is how much of a bubble it is.
Yeah.
Some international schools, like the one I used to attend, or they used to attend, was a bubble. It was a lovely bubble that smelled of candy and of roses. But not all international schools are like that. So, for instance, at the French Lycée, they encourage children to leave the school when they have, like, a teacher is missing, for instance. They were allowed to, and then they can come back. At my daughter's school, they don't even have a lunchroom. So they're also encouraged to have lunch outside of school.
Interesting.
Wow. Yeah, my son had a similar experience when he was attending Czech Gymnasium after our time in China. When COVID hit, we moved back here. And he had a similar thing out in the Moravian countryside where, like, oh, your second period teacher isn't here today. So you have from 10 to 11, you're free. And he just was like wandering around town till hopefully go back to his 11 o'clock class. And I find that very interesting. Like we are so used to, you were used to the French system. We're used to the American system, like, and with different states that we grew up in, like every place we have what we think is the way to do education, but then we find out there are so many other ways to do it around the world. So for sure. No, I was also just going to mention with the children getting older and that whole sense of independence and power of being on public transport without your parents' eyes watching. Because I know, like, here in Czech Republic, it's very important that you give your seat up to a handicapped person or a pregnant woman or the elderly. And I think we're somewhat, I'm on public transport every morning and like so many kids are traveling next to me and they're just like zoned into their phones. But there are ones that aren't and are still aware of the surroundings around them. And I do think it's a really important skill to like remember in 3 short years, you're going to be a community member of the Czech citizenry or the international community. So I think that's part of learning that we don't think in choosing the school. Like we don't need our driver to drop them off.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I would also add that in a society that is slightly obsessed with safety, and we're always worried about our children's safety, I think that at one point in their education, we also have to consider giving them the keys to acquire this sense of safety and feeling safe as part of society. You see what I mean? So this is
so
where
true.
Going to a school where you know that they'd have a slightly different approach, where they would let the children out at times when the kids would independently come out of school and come in, and there would be that would be, I think, one thing to consider. Not when the children are 7 years old, but definitely when they're teenagers. Yeah,
for sure. Sure.
That reminds me. So we did an episode about accreditations linked with a few other topics. And a huge thing for accreditations is safety and safeguarding and health and all of these things wrapped into one. And I'm curious, you're an educator, so you already have this knowledge of accreditation. And not everybody does. But I'm curious, when you were picking your school for your kids, either or, did you have a look or were you knowledgeable on the schools that you were considering, what accreditations they had? And did that play a part in your understanding of their safety or safeguarding or anything in this realm as you were picking schools?
Not at all.
Okay.
And I could add something just to make sure that my answer is a little bit longer than not at all. I would say that I never looked into the different accrediting systems. Okay, that was never on my radar. But one thing that was crucial, and I even had this at the Czech school, I went out of my way to meet with the form tutor when my son started at the Czech school, and she fortunately spoke English, so we were able to converse. And my question is, if you notice that my child is not happy, doesn't feel safe, is being bullied, is failing academically, will I be informed? Will you talk to me? First, will you talk to my child, and then will you talk to me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And at the French Lycée, at the English College, at the Prague British International School, at the Czech school, the answer was yes.
Wonderful. Yeah.
And so I would say that this is the most important question. Even though now at the Czech school, they did say yes. And I think that my son was slightly struggling towards the end of the year last year. I never heard from them. Okay. But I could have gone out of my way and just contacted them. But I need to know, we as parents have to trust the educators. Okay. We're putting our children's lives and future in their hands. We have to trust them. But before trusting them, we can't just trust them blindly. We need to make sure that part of their values, educational system, whatever, is that if something happens to a child, they will have a conversation with the parents.
Well, I was just thinking, I can't imagine a situation where you ask that question and the other side says, no, we won't tell you. But I think by asking the question, you are sending out the message that this is my number one priority for my child. And I think it's a question that parents don't think to ask, because you get this sparkly tour of the school and you get the, marketing jarble of how great the school is. And, sometimes that can really put some rose-colored glasses on parents. And so I think that's a really, really important piece of advice for anyone listening.
Absolutely. So we're moving kind of into the last section here of things. And I'm just curious, what has been the most reassuring part about the decisions that you've made? I know they're still a little bit early for you, but knowing that you have them in two different paths, they seem to be doing well. What has kind of been that feedback loop that you're feeling good about those decisions so far?
My children's happiness.
Yeah, I love it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, I can see the fact that they so when I took my son on the first day to the French Lycée, first of all, he asked me to take him, even though he's 14. And I'm sure that's
big.
All parents will measure what it means, a 14-year-old asking their mom to take them to school on the first day.
Yeah.
And he hadn't been able to eat, and he had a stomach ache, and he was extremely anxious. Now I can see a child going to school with a smile, a sleepy smile at times, obviously, and coming back full of anecdotes. Same with my daughter. So you were talking about the difference between curriculum. So my daughter through the IB, she chose to study philosophy, and she wouldn't have had this opportunity necessarily at the Prague British International School, because this is not a course that they were offering at the time. And she absolutely loves it. And every evening she talks passionately about Marx or Freud and all the things that she's learning about these different aspects. So yes, I can see. And one particular anecdote, it happened last year. My daughter said, I remember how distraught I was when you moved us out of the Prague British International School. And I was crying for months and months. And now I can tell you that it was the best thing that happened to me.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, that's really beautiful.
It is.
So for parents who are in somewhat of a similar situation, whether they have one child or multiple children, and looking for a new school or maybe the first international school, do you have any advice from your experience that you would share?
Yes. So I've thought about that quite a bit. I've used, as I said before, I would say, first of all, trust your family, trust yourself. Okay. Education and choosing a school, it's something very important. And this is what we're talking about. But education starts at home. So if you have strong values as a family, I think that this is essential. Okay. And you need to trust these values that you have at home. That would be my introduction. And then I would say, talk to your children. This is a piece of advice I would give in many circumstances, whether we're talking about screen addiction, whether we're talking about homework, whether we're talking about anything. Talk to your children. Have an honest conversation with them about what they want, what they're interested in. They probably will not even know themselves what they're interested in which case, make sure that you keep all the doors open.
I love that.
Yes.
Yeah.
This is, I think, the best thing that we can do for them is make sure that whatever we choose, and, I don't know if the British education is better than the French lycée, but I know for a fact that in both schools, my children will have all their doors open, as many doors in terms of languages, in terms of where they can go. Their diplomas, IB or the French bac, will be recognized anywhere they go. And I'm not closing any doors. And this is really an important thing. So make sure that if they don't know what they're interested in, make sure that open things as much as possible. Don't necessarily and give them the opportunities to have different experiences. Okay, and then take into account their culture. I'm not necessarily talking about the culture of their country, but their like inner culture, so to speak. So the desire to belong. So, for instance, we talked about culture at the start of the podcast. For my daughter, she needed her individual needs to be recognized. My son, what he wants to belong as well. Everyone wants to belong. He wants to belong, but he needs to be part of a group. Yeah. And this is maybe the football culture. I don't know.
Yeah, I was just going to say the sports team, something like that. Yeah.
But he listened to what's important for them. Okay. Have an honest dialogue and then reassure them. No decision is final.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that.
Yeah.
But the more you open those doors, the less decisions that have to be final, and I often think, for me, watching my own son, gear towards go through the MYP. And it was kind of a plan that, he's going to be a great DP candidate because he scored highly and did well and enjoyed the projects. But then when it came down to those 6 choices you have to make in the DP, it was far too narrow for him. And I know that wasn't where his passions were, the offerings that the school had. Not that it was bad. It was just, it wasn't wide enough for him. So his doors weren't wide enough open. So that's why he's doing something very different now.
Which is great.
Sure. Which is amazing. Yeah, for sure. So it's always exciting to think where will yours be in 10 years and yours in 3 and mine now. So it's exciting.
But this is also down to you because it means that you've also enabled this.
Yeah. And I think most of us parents who are doing this educational journey abroad, like, do have a different perspective on that in a lot of ways, but I think there's been so much value to what you have said today. And we thank you for having, sharing your wisdom and ideas. And there's a question that we want to end for everyone to make sure that they answer this on our podcast. Like, what has teaching and working and living abroad taught you about yourself and maybe like your family? Could you tell us that?
Yeah, I would say that it has taught me one thing on a personal level. Something I didn't know about myself is that I am emotionally intelligent.
Mm-hmm.
And
we knew that.
Yeah,
Yes, we did.
It took me a while to find this out about myself, or to have this confidence about my intelligence, my emotional intelligence. And I think that it really stems from the fact that I was exposed to different cultures. I was given the ability the opportunity to recognize them and to empathize with them. And when I talk to my friends back home, some of them are educators, some are not, I can see that they have a very different perspective. And that's the second thing it has taught me. I have learned that, and you touched upon it a little bit earlier on. I've learned that what you take for granted, coming from your education, coming from your values, may mean a lot to you. So, for instance, something that means a lot to me as a French person is secularism, that the state has to be very different from your, that, how can I say it? Yes, that if you have a public job, like a teaching job, for instance, and I'm a civil servant in France, I am never allowed to share my opinion with anyone else, okay? Because my function is more important than my person. So this value, or secularism, meant a lot for me, but has absolutely no echo in other cultures. And being abroad, I've learned about Japanese, Korean, Chinese educations, for instance, that have completely different standards, value different skills. So now, as a result, I believe in relativity. I do not believe in one size fits all, which is more or less the French motto.
Interesting. That's great.
Wow.
That's great. Is there anything else you would like to share with our, we're trying to reach parents who are making these tough choices abroad. We're trying to reach educators who may be taking that first risk to come abroad. Is there any other advice you might have for them out there in the World Wide Web?
I think it's a great experience. And if for some reason, as a teacher who has children, that's it. Or as someone maybe thinking of as an expat looking for, or someone looking to live abroad, and maybe why not even a local interested in international education, this is a very interesting experience. Go for it.
I love that. Definitely agree. Yes. Thank you so much, Marion.
Thank you.
Your wisdom was definitely valuable to not only just us hearing your story, but I'm sure to lots of other people who will be listening. So thank you so much for sharing.
And thank you for being part of the Connected Global community, where we're trying to bring educators and people from around the world together to share their stories. And we really appreciate hearing yours.
Thank you so much.
So that wraps up today's episode. For our listeners, we hope Marion's journey shows that there is no one size fits all when it comes to choosing an international school. It's about knowing your child, asking the right questions, and really trusting your gut along the way.
If you're in the middle of this process yourself, hop over to our platform at connectedglobal.org to find lots of resources to help you navigate those choices ahead.
And remember, again, at connectedglobal.org, you can always book a consultation with us, whether you're weighing international school curricula, comparing contracts, or just trying to figure out the best fit for you and your family. We're here to help guide you through the wide world of international education with more confidence.
Definitely. And if this episode resonated with you, share it with another parent. Share a friendly comment with us, or subscribe, and don't miss any other Insider Voices series episodes like Marion.
That's right. And so until next time, may your school tours be honest.
And your safeguarding policies be clear.
And your children's learning be joyful and international.
Oh my God, thank you.
I got you. I got you.
Wow.
I'm here for some good things.
Ooh, that was close.
Sorry about that.
I think it's
Maybe
fine.
you can even pause that out. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh my gosh, I'm so tense and I'm so sad. But Marion, I think that was really good.
Are you okay with me like this? I feel like I'm on top of you.
I know, but at the same
Sorry.
time, like I only
Okay,
have this
good.
part of it.
Now stay in your box, my friend.